Hi guys, welcome back to The Baseline. Hope you guys are having a great day, a great night, great life. So imagine this, everyone. The lights flicker in a boardroom in Amsterdam. A Chinese CEO checks his phone and discovers something really peculiar. He discovers his company had just been seized by the Dutch government. Now, there's no warning here. There's no negotiation. It's just gone. Blink. And you miss the moment democracy quietly nationalized a tech giant. So what happened here? It's really interesting, right? Because what happened that morning wasn't just about one company. It was the sound of Europe maybe picking a side in the new global tech war. A war that's no longer fought with tanks or missiles, but with microchips the size of a fingernail. So see, guys, the Netherlands, this beautiful country, amazing people, wonderful culture, right? This quiet, neutral-looking country that gave us tulips and bicycles just drew a red line across a global economy. Now, the company they took over is called Nexperia. Now, Nexperia is a $50 billion semiconductor firm. Now, they're technically Dutch, but owned by WingTech Technology, a Chinese state-linked corporation. And overnight, the Dutch minister, or Ministry of Economic Affairs, said, you know what, enough is enough. So what did they do? They froze the company's assets, stripped the Chinese CEO of any of his authority, and placed everything, every patent, every plant under direct national control. Intense move. And that sounds like, really, it sounds like something out of a Cold War thriller. But it happened last week. So the question becomes this, right? Like, why? Why such a drastic thing, such a big move? Well, the government said it was to protect national security. But that phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting these days, isn't it? Because the real reason, the one that no one really wants to say on the record, is that Nexperia's chips weren't just powering electric cars. They were showing up in Russian drones that were bombing Ukraine. Now, if we put the links together, right? Dutch-made technology manufactured under Chinese ownership being used against Dutch allies. Does it get better than that? I don't know. But that's not a supply chain problem. It's a moral and ethical one. And in that moment, I think the Netherlands perhaps realized that this wasn't just about chips. It was about a kind of a control. Who builds the future and who's going to really just end up renting it? So if we pause, if we take a breath for a moment, because this story has so many twists, it's worthy of a Christopher Nolan movie. A few miles away from Nexperia's office sits ASML. Now, ASML, a company most people have actually never heard of, but every superpower on Earth actually depends on. Now, ASML makes the most advanced lithography machines in the world. Now, this actually prints the actual chips. And these machines, they cost $380 million each, contain 100,000 parts, and are so complex that if you sneeze near one, an engineer in Germany would end up feeling it. Now, without ASML, there is no NVIDIA, there's no Apple, there's no AI revolution. And here's the crazy thing to it all. ASML is a Dutch company too. Now, that's why Washington and Beijing both have their eyes on the same tiny country. Because whoever controls those machines controls the modern world. It's like if Switzerland suddenly controlled oxygen. Now, back in 2018, we have to look back. The Netherlands had approved a license for ASML to sell its cutting-edge EUV machines to China. And then Trump and his administration intervened. Now, how did they do that? Did they do it with the sanctions? Did They didn't. They didn't do it with sanctions, not with force, but with persuasion. Now, they quietly sent a delegation, including Pentagon officials, to convince the Dutch to block the sale. And they did. Now, under Biden, that pressure only intensified by 2023. Now, even ASML's older DUV machines were restricted from being shipped to China. And just like that, the Netherlands, the beautiful Netherlands, a country of 17 million people, became the frontline state in the world's biggest economic war. So when the government seized Nexperia, it wasn't an isolated decision. It was a sort of a declaration, if you will, because Europe is now fighting America's tech war. But here's where it gets somewhat complicated. ASML made nearly 30% of its revenue from China. So blocking those exports has already wiped $100 billion off its market cap. So Dutch politicians, they're actually furious about this, some calling it economic coercion by another name. And yet they can't say no, because sitting in Dutch air bases right now are United States nuclear warheads. And without American defense, without American military, the Netherlands and most of Europe probably would be exposed to Russia. And Russia would be probably pretty aggressive overnight. So here we all are, a democratic nation seizing a company, bending to another democracy's pressure to counter an authoritarian regime that allegedly is stealing its technology. It's a crazy hall of mirrors to follow. But every side is saying national security. But what they really mean is national dependence. So if we were to put it as plainly as we could, this is no longer about trade. It's about technological sovereignty. Who gets to design the world's intelligence, both artificial and human? Because when a Dutch engineer builds a chip that powers an AI drone, and that drone decides who's actually going to live or die, that's not economics anymore, is it? That starts to get into ethics. And ethics don't scale. Now, the United States calls it protection. China calls it theft. Europe calls it self-defense. But to the average citizen watching, prices are still climbing and industries shift. It all feels like a kind of a deja vu, another invisible war fought over power disguised as progress. So think of it like watching your landlord and your bank fight over your house, and somehow you lose the keys. Now, the Netherlands didn't just seize a company. It seized control of a fault line in the global order. And somewhere in Beijing, someone just updated their plans for technological independence. Now, if Europe can use a 1952 war law to seize a chip maker, China can justify doing the same thing, I would imagine. And I'm sure they could do it in the name of security just as well. So maybe the red line isn't between nations. Maybe it's between freedom and control. Maybe it's not drawn on a map, but maybe it's going to be drawn on a circuit board. And the question now becomes somewhat more simple. Who draws the next line? All right, guys, what do you think? Do I have this all right, all wrong? Let me know in the comment section below. I value your guys' opinion. And thank you guys so much for watching me here on The Baseline. All right, cheers, everybody.